Story 1. In my college dorm, we played a game called Killer. Around 100 people were given assignments to kill another person in the group by placing a sticky note on them. Once you killed someone, you then took up their assignment. The game ends when only one person remains. About a month into the game, I had killed 5 people, there were fewer than 10 people remaining, and I had no idea who was assigned to kill me. One day, I was studying in my room, which is a safe haven, and I heard a knock on my door. It was my neighbor with his girlfriend and her friend. My neighbor said that his key had gotten stuck in his lock and asked if I had pliers to yank it out. I did, so I gave them to him and followed him out the door to help. As soon as I stepped out of the room, his girlfriend's friend stuck a sticky note on my arm, killing me. That guy set me up, and I'll never forgive him. Story 2. Being fired by Disney during the pandemic, along with over 30,000 other employees. Then the executives giving themselves a fat bonus. Then, when my old job was reopened, I had to reapply, interviewed, and lost it to someone with 0 experience. I had over 20 years of experience in my very niche field. Story 3. My grandmother blamed me for the nails in her tire. I was 6 and she lived in the middle of nowhere. It was 25 years ago, and I will never forget the scolding I got from her for it. She was quite unreasonable. Story 4. My sister stole my dad's watch from his dead body. A watch my mom and I bought him when, for the first time in his entire life, he asked for it. My mom wanted it, the only thing he ever asked of her. Sister denied it and I let it go, because I didn't want to sour an already terrible moment in our lives and told my mom it was unfortunately lost during transport. But it still burns. Story 5. My high school English teacher had a quiz and asked what the difference between adjectives and adverbs was. And my answer was, adjectives modify nouns, while adverbs modify verbs or adjectives. I got a 9 out of 10 for that. His answer was words that end in ly. He graduated from Harvard and didn't like being corrected. I was annoyed that my more accurate answer scored lower than his incorrect answer. This was 20 years ago. Story 6. When I was 12 years old, my friend came to my house. She bet me that I couldn't fit into a kennel that we had in my room for a new puppy we just got. I crawled in to show her I could do it, and she proceeded to shut me in. I can't remember how, but she made it so I could not get out. At first I thought, haha, seriously, let me out. Then she ran over, grabbed my diary that I told her she couldn't read, and proceeded to read everything out loud while laughing. I went from complete panic trying to get out to being defeated, bent over and sobbing, while she read what I wrote about recently losing my childhood dog we had since I was born, all while reading in a mocking voice, laughing. I never told anyone, just wanted everyone to leave me alone. Realized that day some people are truly heartless. If any good came out of that situation, it is that I have tried my very best at being really attentive with my kids after school, after playdates, anything. Growing up is so painful at times. What they deal with on a day-to-day basis is much more exhausting than what I deal with as an adult. I don't think enough people realize how much is coming at them. Wow, I have been sobbing while writing all that. Thanks, Reddit, for letting me get that off my chest. Story 7. We did Secret Santa at work. You pick names out of a hat and get your colleague a gift, but they don't know who it's from. There was only a £5 spending limit. I got a box of chocolates for £5 and donated £5 for charity on his behalf. You get a voucher saying you have been gifted £5, which will be used to buy books for children in Africa or something like that. So I spent double. Anyway, this person I gave the present to somehow spent all day investigating who got what present and managed to figure out I was his Secret Santa. He came over to my desk, threw the voucher at me and said, "I don't do charity," and walked off. I mean, what? Story 8. I'm still mad about Hepting versus AT&T. So much work was put into identifying that AT&T was illegally allowing the National Security Agency to wiretap its customers, then in making sure it was legal to sue AT&T for this, and then in making sure the government couldn't invoke state secrets to hush the whole thing up. Then Congress passed a law that gave AT&T retroactive immunity for their crimes. I am still mad that when people caught the government red-handed colluding with the industry to illegally subvert constitutionally protected rights, Congress got away with just making it legal retroactively. Story 9. how people treated me in middle school, and all the horrible rumors about me in high school. And I wouldn't particularly say angry, but I'm definitely still a little salty about it. To the point I don't see or talk to any of them, which is easy because I don't have social media besides Reddit. The only downside is I would like to catch up with a select few who were good to me, but I don't know how I would do that because I don't have social media. Story 10. Missing field day in the 6th grade. In honor of the Olympics, my elementary school hosted an all-day field day with games and competitions. It was supposed to be a super fun time. My homeroom teacher was behind on a lot of work, so she selected 5 students, myself included, to go to an empty room to do various paperwork tasks. Took us all day, and she told us we could not participate in the fun until all the work was done. I begged her to allow me to go to the competitions. I had practiced my running and long jumping, and I had been looking forward to it for 3 weeks. By the time we finished and were allowed to go, our grade level was done, and everyone was returning to their rooms. I cried for days. I was 12. I'm 40, and this memory still makes me extremely upset and devastatingly sad. Story 11. My uncle, who stole tens of thousands from my grandmother when she was dying of cancer. My son's first pediatricians, who missed his congenital cataract. It wasn't discovered until he was almost 4. He still has effectively no vision in that eye despite years of attempts because his brain just ignored the signal. Most everything else is just water under the bridge. Story 12. The Federal Communications Commission Act of 1996. Originally, anger arose because it allowed my favorite radio station to be bought by Clear Channel and reformatted back in 1997 or 1998. But I keep seeing more and more knock-on effects of that horrible law, which has given us the awful media, including technology and social media, landscape we have now. Story 13. The fact that so many of my classmates throughout middle and high school tormented me regularly, and now they get to live their lives while I'm stuck with the aftereffects of 4 to 6 years of having any semblance of self-confidence torn down. Story 14. I had a charm bracelet that I had been collecting charms for since I was a toddler. Many of them came from another country I lived in before coming back to the United States. In the 2nd grade, I brought it to school for show and tell, and a girl who was my friend stole it from me. Then she wore it and said it was hers, and the teacher did not believe me. Wherever you are and whoever you grew up to be, Megan, I hope you have hemorrhoids. Story 15. My first proper crush, whom I was fully in love with, and I think he liked me back. He'd always be around me, hug me from behind, always ask about my interests and what he wanted to do in the future, and we would chat about that. I told someone who I thought was a trusted friend, but nope. She asked him out a few days later and started dating him. My other friends pulled me aside and told me, and I just cried. Story 16. In the fractions unit of grade 3 math in Canada, I completed a worksheet that required me to evenly divide by drawing lines a 2D picture of a horse. I drew diagonal lines dividing the horse into segments that represented a similar area. Hind legs with hips and some body, a large midsection of body, and front legs with head and neck but no torso. The teacher marked my answer entirely incorrect. They wanted straight vertical lines placed equidistantly across the picture. I have 2 degrees and a successful professional career, but I still hate that teacher with the fire of 1,000 suns. Story 17. Choosing to stay home instead of seeing my Nana during Christmas break because I had a cold. I didn't feel like traveling almost 3 hours away and spending the weekend with no internet and basically no television as well. She died suddenly 2 months later. That would have been the last time I would have seen her alive. Story 18. My grandfather molested my sister and me when we were children. When we finally told our parents, not only was it immediately swept under the rug, but they also continued to leave us there on the weekends. When I try to discuss it with my mother, she deflects blame and refuses to validate my feelings, even having the nerve to say, "You just want to be a perpetual victim." Story 19. The Concorde was banned from flying over land. That decision left it with only 2 routes: New York to London and New York to Paris. The study conducted by the United States Army regarding sonic booms was performed by military aircraft, which often fly as low as 500 feet. The Concorde didn't even reach supersonic speeds until 40,000 feet and cruised at 60,000 feet. To anyone standing on the ground, The Concorde was actually quieter than other jet airliners. The United States government was upset that Boeing never managed to make its own supersonic airliner, and so confined the Concorde to transatlantic flights out of pure spite. This decision meant that the Concorde was never economically viable, which is why it was retired after one crash. Story 20. The first time all of my high school best friends group came home from college over the holiday break. They had a movie night together and didn't invite me. Later on, they asked why I wasn't there. I didn't get invited to any of their weddings either. I suppose I messed up somewhere along the line and didn't realize it, but getting excluded by your best friends at 18 was tough. Story 21. My mother left our family when I was 5. You have to be pretty messed up to walk away from your young kids. It messed my brother and me up forever. I have learned to deal with the anger, but my brother never could and ended his life when he was 50. I am still angry, Mom. Story 22. Junior high, 7th to 9th grades. I had the same teacher for English and Spanish. The same boys would grab my breasts, as I was one of the few girls who had developed, snap my bra, and call me names because I had bad acne. This teacher never acknowledged what was going on in her classroom. Do you know how difficult it is to pay attention when you are hunched over your desk trying to protect yourself from this unwanted attention? The responses given when I protested: oh, it's just boys being boys, or they only tease you because they like you. No, it's abuse. Forget that nonsense. Story 23. College professor. Copy and layout. Our first assignment was to create a trifold brochure. These were days before the internet was ubiquitous and less than 50% of people owned a computer. We spent most of the class period complaining about how they couldn't do it, it wasn't fair, it was too much, etc. The professor finally relented and told everyone if they could open a document in a painting software, draw a rudimentary picture in it, and print it out, he would give them a C. 2 weeks later, the assignment was due. I had my own desktop and Quark Express and created the brochure for the assignment. I spent a lot of time and effort finding the pictures, writing the copy, laying it out in an aesthetic manner, ensuring the trifold was even, and turned it in. A week later, I received a C+ on the assignment. People who spent 5 minutes doing the simplest task got a C, and the several hours I spent making the best project I could got a half-letter grade better. That person ruined the last 2 semesters of college. Story 24. Being fired while on maternity leave. The baby was stillborn, for what it's worth. I nearly died during labor. Thanks, John, for derailing my career and, with it, my life. Story 25. When I was a sophomore in high school, I took a home economics class, and our first project was to choose a stuffed animal kit out of a catalog and sew it from top to bottom. I chose a white puppy pattern and realized I thoroughly enjoyed working on it. I loved it so much I spent evenings working on it instead of doing normal teen stuff and turned it in early. I am 56 years old, and I still remember the skeptical expression on the teacher's face and her looking it over, asking if I had any help. I proudly told her I did it myself and loved doing it. The teacher did not believe me and gave me a C. My one friend's project was a total wreck, and she got an A. After that, I never made an effort in her class, and I never sewed again. About 20 years ago, I was behind her in line at our town grocery store and was still seething. By the way, I still have the stuffed dog, and it is still holding up just fine. Story 26. I should have kissed the girl in the rain. This was 30 years ago. She wanted me to. I knew that at the time, and I just froze. One of the top 5 romantic moments of my life, and I was too scared to kiss the girl. Story 27. Getting passed over for a promotion while someone with a lot less seniority got it was so angering that I had to go outside for a bit to avoid saying anything I would regret to my supervisor and manager. It still bothers me years later. Story 28. Back when I was in middle school, we lived pretty close to Washington, D.C., maybe about 45 minutes away. September 11th happened, and it completely stopped the school day. Parents were coming to pick up their kids. My mom never came. At the end of the school day, it was me, my sister, and our one neighbor on the school bus. Got home, and my mom was just on the couch watching the news. I'm still mad at her about that. Story 29. I wrote a goodbye letter to a deceased relative and put it in their casket. Another relative saw me do it, took it out, read it, and shared it with other family members. The betrayal still feels fresh when I remember it. Story 30. My brother and I are twins. I'm left-handed, and he's right-handed. One year when we were maybe 7 years old, we went to our great-aunt's house for Christmas Eve, and one of the relatives there gave both me and my brother baseball gloves. Both were right-handed baseball gloves. We weren't especially close with these relatives, and when I started to say something in protest, my parents quickly silenced me. My brother got to keep both gloves, and I got nothing. Story 31. Spending 8 hours calling a radio station on 4 phones to win meet and greet passes for One Direction, and then being told I'm disqualified on a rule that was never printed or stated before I wasted my time. I will forever hate iHeartRadio.